Hello and welcome to my video all about how to knit moss stitch. This classic texture is reversible and it's made up of only knit and purl stitches, so it's great for beginners. It's a very popular pattern, easy to do, and it's one of my favourites. Right, so to begin you need to cast on an odd number of stitches. I cast on 11. This is a 4-row pattern repeat and it results in a symmetrical pattern. Okay, so for row 1 you need to begin with a knit stitch. So make sure the working yarn is at the back behind the needles and knit 1 stitch. Then bring the working yarn between the needles to the front and purl 1 stitch. And then take the working yarn between the needles to the back again and knit 1 stitch. And then you just repeat purl 1, knit 1 over and over until the end of the row. So that's purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, and so on. If you now take a look at the stitches from this side, you can see that every other stitch has a little bump of yarn, and these are called purl bumps. The stitches with the purl bumps are purl stitches, and those without are knit stitches. For row 2, what we're going to do is knit the knits and purl the purls. So every time you see a purl stitch, you're going to purl it, and every time you see a knit stitch, you're going to knit it. I have a video all about knitting the knits and purling the purls if you'd like to learn more. So for row 2, we're going to purl that first stitch because as you can see, it has a little purl bump. So make sure the working yarn is at the front and purl 1. Then take the working yarn between the needles to the back and knit a stitch. And then bring the working yarn to the front again and purl a stitch. And then just repeat. Knit 1, purl 1 over and over until the end of the row. And here you can see the texture so far. Then for row 3 we're going to be following the exact same pattern as row 2, except this time we're going to be knitting the purls and purling the knits. As you can see, the first stitch doesn't have a purl bump, so it's a knit stitch, and therefore we're going to purl this stitch. So row 3 begins with 1 purl stitch. Then you knit 1 stitch and purl 1 stitch. And just repeat knit 1, purl 1 until the end of the row. Moss stitch is basically single ribbing, except every 2 rows you just swap the positions of the knits and purls. So you do 2 rows of single ribbing and then you do 2 rows of misaligned single ribbing, and you just repeat that over and over. And then finally row 4 is the same as row 1. So begin with a knit stitch, then purl 1, and knit 1. And then repeat purl 1, knit 1 over and over until the end of the row. And now you just need to repeat that pattern as many times as you wish. And then you should have something that looks like this. As you can see, it's a very nice reversible texture, and now you can recognise it. I'm sure you'll notice it in many different knitting projects. And for comparison purposes, I've also knit a swatch of moss stitch in a lighter weight yarn, so you can see how that looks as well. And just as a side note, in case you want to know, if you want to knit an unsymmetrical pattern instead, or you want to knit moss stitch in the round, then this is the pattern you would need to follow. I really hope you found this video useful, and thank you very much for watching.